Hello, everyone. My name is Alla. I'm a Slack community chapter lead in Amsterdam. I've been doing that for 2 years. I'm celebrating 2 years this month. That's exciting. And this is our final event for 2021. And we decided to finish super strong. We decided to touch the topic that is hot and interesting. Everyone is talking about data. Everyone is saying, hey, we are a data-driven company. But I'm very curious, as a lot of our community members, what exactly it takes to become a data-driven company. So what is it data-driven? And we're going to learn from amazing speakers that I'm going to introduce very shortly. So I'm going to share my screen to show you a couple of small slides about community, how to join, and some recent events that happened. I promise it's not going to take a lot of time because we all want to dive into the discussions with our experts that we have today with us, okay? Should be any questions, please send them in the chat or ask them directly. I'm going to share the screen and show you a small presentation that I prepared. That's going to be the one. You see the troubleshooting part? No worries, that's all done. So I'm going to present the slide. So basically, we're going to talk about what it takes to become a data-driven organization. And I want to welcome you all again to join our community. And one of the important slides, this is a very important slide. If you're in the middle of something, your emails or anything else, try to find the time just to focus on the things that are happening here, if it's possible. Turn off the notifications and dive into the amazing things that these very smart and amazing people are going to share with you. This is me. I already introduced myself. And this is the small agenda. So we will go through some very quick updates. Then we go to the guest speakers that we have. We have 2 presentations to go through, very exciting ones. And we are going to have the Q&A session with experts where Lou and me are going to navigate the questions from you to our expert panel, because you have few people from Philips, from TechLabs, from IBM AMRO, on Nexus, G2A, and all these companies really know a lot about data. This is what we strive for as a community. So these are the pillars that we stand on. So of course, we would like to level up. We would like to bring great experts to our community. We would like to be inspired and inspire others, give as much as we can, and of course, connect and hanging out and talk about stuff that is important for us. The recent event that happened was Slack Frontiers. I believe the videos are still available. It was at the end of November, and I'm very proud that Amsterdam chapter was also highlighted there, and that's actually super awesome because they find us as an active chapter with nice events. So very proud of it. So great job of everyone who joined us some time ago. And I will share the link so you can still watch amazing videos from the speakers from different backgrounds. It's like big enterprise companies, actors, athletes, and other people sharing a great piece of advice on productivity and being awesome. Slack is all about data. So actually, I still have my nails done in this style. So it was for Frontiers. At Frontiers, this slide was shared, and I was impressed because I actually didn't know that we have 300,000 messages sent per second. Can you imagine this? Like Slack is all about the data. That's actually how I came up with the idea. So it should be about the data. Otherwise, I can't imagine that we are not going to discuss so many amazing things in events that are happening in the big tech companies. Having plus 1 million developers building apps on Slack, so this is amazing. So I just wanted to share with you guys that Slack is super data driven, and there are so many things we can learn from Slack. This is the way how you can join. So I will share the link. It's very easy. You have access to the workplace of Slack community. this way you just can absorb. You don't need to jump in straight away in conversations or being active. No one expects that from you. Don't worry. Just join, just see who are the people, make an intro if you like. So this is community for all the types of communications you like. You would like to be active participator? Great. Join me, by the way, as in the chapter to organize these events. If you're interested, let me know. Join just to be aware of what is happening with Slack, how to build apps, anything. So don't be afraid to join. That's not everyone talk as much as I do. So in there, so don't worry. And yeah, so I would like to move to the first speaker. That's, I can't believe that we have. Thank you, Lou, actually, for sharing your amazing network of data-driven people. So we have Andreea Moga, chairwoman, tech mentor, TechLabs Rotterdam. I would like to really give her an opportunity to share an amazing enlightening talk, we call it. So she's going to inspire you. I just wanted to quickly check, Andreea, would you like me to click on the slides, or you would like me to stop sharing and you would like to share?
I think I'm good with sharing my screen.
Perfect.
If that's okay with you. So
absolutely.
I can start doing that already.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see if you can do that, because Zoom has interesting things about giving the rights.
Let me see.
I'm afraid now making anyone a host, because last time I did, the event ended. So it's a dangerous path, I believe.
Let me see if that works.
Perfect. Yes, we can see. Yes.
Awesome. Now I cannot see you. Just give me a second. All right. So thank you so much, Ala, for the invite, and really glad to reconnect again together with Lou, David, and Anna. So thank you so much, and welcome everyone to this vibrant community of Slack. Before I go into sharing my, let's say, my insights in data-driven world, I'd just like to give you brief intro about myself. So I'm currently the chairwoman, tech mentor at TechLabs Rotterdam, and at TechLabs, our dream is actually to build a world of digital shapers with free tech education. So we are basically a learning accelerator where we teach data science, AI, UX, and web development. More info is going to come soon. So I'm really happy to be here today and share to you about 3 myths in the data-driven organizations, which I kind of see it still as a challenge for a couple of organizations, because it's pretty much new. What are the steps? For some of the companies, it's pretty difficult to decide on the right steps on what to do, how to become a data-driven. So with this, I'd like to start with this inspiring quote of Albert Einstein, which for me, he is one of the, let's say, inspiring models in science and wisdom based on science. And that's, thinking about the way how we approach problems at the moment and the challenge of becoming data-driven. I think if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about the solution. And this is something that I want to, just to really draw your attention to. And with this, I would like to start with 3 of the myths, because I'm not saying there are only just 3, but I believe there are more than this. So, some misconceptions that people believe when they are trying to bring their organization to a data-driven model. So first one is the sole focus on technology stack, talent and abilities. The second one would be believing that data-driven means we should just listen to data and what the data says. And the third one is looking at the data science department as a service. And with this, I would like to start to give you more info about focusing on the technology stack. So that's a myth at the moment. There are plenty of organizations who have tried. They are investing a lot of money in buying, latest tech stack, latest, dashboarding, all cloud platforms and things like that. But the first principal challenge, according to a study done by a big consulting firm in the US, that is New Vantage Partners, is actually the challenges to becoming a data-driven is people, business processes, and culture. And among these executives that have been actually interviewed by New Vantage partners, 92% of them, they were actually data analytics leaders. So they were people with the know-how in the tech stack and the technology domain. So with this, I would like to draw your attention that it's really about building the culture and really enabling a data-driven mindset across the entire organization. There are all kinds of ways and workshops and things of doing that. I will go later into details, or maybe if you want to connect with me after that, happy to do that. The second myth is that, a lot of companies think like, yeah, data-driven decision-making should be the best way to do it. But what we forget is that data-driven is only telling you what the users are doing behind the actions, but they don't tell you why they're doing this, which is pretty much, the same thing of quantitative research, which is stored by the data, and then you have qualitative research, which is coming from really getting closer to the user and really understanding the reasoning and the motivation of doing certain things. So what you see a lot of companies like Netflix, Uber, Facebook as well, they're adopting this for a couple of years, the concept of being data informed, which is next step after being data driven. So yes, we have the data, but we cannot solely rely on data because of reasons like trust, data integrity. Do I trust my data source? That's not a very simple solution. So this is a second myth. Third myth will be, actually, before I go into the third myth, I would like to give you an example, a real story it's a real experience that I've had with a bunch of engineers and AI data scientists in the beginning of this year, just to give an example of the mindset that we have. Even though we are working with data, we're coding, and we really think we're solving problems. So what happened is that we started making a bet, and we tried to ask ourselves, it was in the beginning of the year, we haven't been to the office for a year already, and we wanted to make a bet when on the question, answer this question, when are we going to come back to the office in the end? Because it was already a year and we weren't able to go back to the office. And a lot of people, a lot of us, they were starting shouting and really throwing dates very randomly, like, I think, and they were talking, I think we're going to come back in March. I think it's going to be next year. But how do we actually answer questions? It's again going back to what Albert Einstein says, like, how do we actually formulate a problem? And how do we look at this should actually be the mindset of using the data-driven. So what do we know already? Back then, in January, we knew the government of the Netherlands, they were already planning out, they had already this plan showcased on the internet. So that was already like a kind of a data-informed type of layer. So this I want to involve, and I want to draw your attention to the first principle of thinking that is given by Elon Musk, which says that everything starts from boiling down the things towards the fundamental truth. What do we know already? And start reasoning out from there. So just to give you an idea, sometimes even if we are coders, we actually have to think out of the box and really ask ourselves this question. So I hope with this, I will start raising the reasoning that you guys are having already. And for the third myth, a lot of companies are considering data science departments just as a service, and they work with the data scientists more like asking them, serve me for this question, instead of, I believe it should be more a partnership. So when you work with the data scientist team, just work together and understand each other's domain, business areas, knowledge and questions, because in this way, you're also motivating the data scientists to solve their problems. And with this, I would like to invite you to go on Prime Video and check this movie of Moneyball 2011. Maybe some of you know it. This is a really fun example of how the data scientist was actually working in partnership with the leader of the team by solving this problem of using low budget to win against a very expensive team. That was it from my side. I guess, guys, if you want to learn more about TechLabs, about our education program, it's also an invitation to you. We are currently running, in January, we're going to start a new data science learning track, and it's free. And everyone is welcome to join and to be part of it. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are any questions.
Let's see if there are any questions in the chat, but yeah, no worries. We are going to have questions after all in the Q&A session that we have. That's amazing. Yeah. Everyone is saying thank you. And I want to, QR codes today. So yes, today it's data. Like, you have data behind data. Can I ask you to mute a couple of mics that are on, but there is something happening in the background? Thank you so much. Perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Andreea, for your time and for your amazing presentation. So we're going to get back to you with questions, of course. And there was already questions for the website, link to the website. That's all good. And we're going to pick up the rest. So let's move to another presenter for today. I'm gonna ask David. So David, would you prefer me to show you your slides, or you would like to do it yourself?
I'll try to do it myself.
Okay, so let me know. There's a very nice fancy slide that I prepared for you with your picture. So you can start from that one.
Yeah, okay, sure. Let's see.
Let's see. Exciting. So David is a machine learning engineer at Nexus, IT freelancing and mentoring at Data Champions Rotterdam.
Okay, is it coming through properly?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you, Ala, for the introduction. That's what I'm doing. Most of my time I work at the Nexus, which is IoT and data science business, and then here and there I do some smaller projects, some mentoring as a freelancer. So let's start. Like my talk is about how to spot data-driven organizations. I think so. Why I want to give this talk is because everybody's saying we are data-driven. Very few people are, and especially like when I was looking for a job, or when you look at it from outside, a lot of times it's kind of hard to really understand whether they're really data-driven or it's mostly, let's say, vaporware and a good facade for the business. So my main points, I will define what is data-driven in my view. The obstacles for it, that's Andreas already mentioned a few of them, and an example of data-driven organizations and how to spot them. So, so the definition of data-driven, I would say it's all about you need two components, and one is obviously the data, and the other one is the decisional power. So the data, I think, is quite obvious why you need it, but the decisional power is like it's more subtle, because a lot of times there are a lot of problems that can arise, or why it would take so long to implement some insights from the data. Also, I think it's, I mean, it's not whether you're data-driven or not. I think you can have, for example, departments that are data-driven or some processes that are. I think it's really hard or barely impossible to have a full data-driven enterprise. And in short, I think it's truly data-driven. If I had to say it in one short sentence, would see either you need a B2C business model or a closed loop business, which I'll define soon. And then there are also a lot of other things, like you can be data-driven internally in some process or externally, like customer facing. So that's say the background. So the obstacles, first is not having data. Like a lot of times, even big organizations don't really have their own data, because maybe they have a very long, let's say, for example, a simple example, Heineken, they are selling beers, but they're selling to restaurants. They're not selling to clients, I think on a big scale. So that is an example of like, you don't really have certain type of data then. And so that can be an obstacle. And a lot of time it's not obvious whether those businesses have data or not. I've seen it quite often with some colleagues that they get hired and then it's like, no, we don't have data. You have to buy or script them or, you know, make some simulations for it. Another restriction can be not the ability not to use them. So if you have GDPR sensible data or you're not allowed to reuse them, that's also an obstacle. Or, you know, I think if you want to be ethical about it, you shouldn't do it. And the last one, I think it's by far the most common, is the ability to make decisions. So if you have, let's say, some data and you say, okay, we need to change, for example, how the parking is happening in one city, something like that would require, say, to build a new city or a new neighborhood or, you know, new parkings. And that's not something you can do like overnight. So a lot of organizations, when you think about, so what is the business model, what are they doing? And you see that the way they can change can be slow in certain key decisions, then it will be hard to be data driven for that specific parts. Or another example is like a lot of times when you're analyzing projects, like let's say a consulting business, and there are data scientists, they say, okay, which projects should we do more? And they could come up with something like, big projects are better, they're big clients, more revenue, it's more stable. But then it's not really realistic to come up with big projects every day. And the last one is like, this feedback loop is long. So I gave the example already with Heineken. Enterprise software is also like that, because they're like, actually we are selling to are not really the final users. And that can be quite challenging then to act on the feedback very quickly. So a kind of data-driven organizations, I think the most famous ones are Uber or all these B2C businesses. Why? Because like adoption is fast. You have a lot of data is being produced, and you also have the ability to change it. So Facebook, YouTube, all this Google, all these advertising platforms, at the end, they're in control of what they're selling, what's happening, and they can change almost overnight. And I think a closed loop process, what I mean there is you want, when you have control from end to end of what you're doing and what your client is doing. And an example there is like influencers. It's very basic. Like you don't need to be a data scientist to do it. But just to give one very recent example, for example, those are Maneskin, like a few years ago, they were playing in Rome. They look really, just a band of people singing on the streets. And this is what they become now when they're very successful. And what happened is just that they saw what worked for them in terms of exhibition, in terms of music, and now they're famous. They're really different from what they used to be. And this has been happening for a very long time. And singers, all this, or any kind of influencers, really has a very quick feedback loop, and they can just improve and learn from that very quickly without really needing a lot of mathematics either. So how to spot them finally, like if you're approaching them, just ask yourself if they're getting paid by the end users, the consumers. Do they own the data and are producing them, or can they make decisions on them? And that goes back to also what Andreea said. It's all about then processes, people, and the disruptive element that a company can have. And that's my closing slide. And that ends the presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, David. And we do have questions for you, so we can move these questions to the Q&A session, because Andreea also has questions. Amazing. I mean, so many different perspectives, but I kind of see that you are united in the front of how do you see things. So referring to each other. So this is amazing. So hopefully we'll have some more questions around it. Perfect. So I'm going to quickly share the screen because I would like to invite some more people to the screen because we are moving to the our panel discussion. So let me know if you see the names. Yeah, right? Perfect. Yes. Sometimes you need the person who is going to just note so that everything goes good. Okay, so together with Andreea and David, we are going to have 2 more people joining us to answer your questions and to have a discussion. Anna Faraon, a business developer from IBM AMRO, and Mateusz. Sorry, Mateusz, I can't pronounce your surname, so that's really I don't want to butcher it. So data analyst.
No worries. It happens quite a lot.
I can imagine. So these are 4 amazing people who decided to spend some time with us and help us to answer your questions and to cover some of the things. I'm gonna probably stop sharing the screen so that we can all focus and look at our faces. And yeah, I see all the speakers on. Before Lou is gonna start helping me out to take in the questions, I would like to pick up several ones from the chat. So the first question that I have is from Jamie. The question for David, actually, is there a framework for data-driven maturity level in an organization, like CMMI sort of thing? Addressing to David, but I'm super happy if anyone from the speaker can also comment on it.
Actually, I have a question. What does CMMI stand for in this case?
I guess if I understood it correctly, it's like, say, how do you know about the framework, or how do you use it, or what is exactly the question?
Is there a framework for data-driven maturity level of organization?
Yeah, there are. I actually studied them too. The thing is, first, usually they're made by I would say not the right people. It's very complex because most frameworks would say, how much of your processes are data driven, but a business as accounting, as logistics, as HR, there are so many different things. So all those frameworks would usually be done by big enterprises for other big enterprises. And in my experience, I cannot say whether they're right or wrong, but you cannot expect that, say, a technology leader will be a leader in each single department. So then, you can use the framework. Personally, I didn't find it so easy or practical to use, I would say. That's my view on it. There is, I think if you really Google this thing, you will find exactly I'll look up if I remember the name. But there are
please do.
Frameworks.
We have Jamie here. Jamie, if you're comfortable to just to ask the follow-up question or anything you want to add, please do.
Hi, thanks for answering, David. I'm not too familiar with this CMMI as an example, but I think it could, being data-driven does sort of need, in a sense, like you were saying, it's a continuum. So something to guide people from, being essentially 0 to how do you get to stage 1 of having the sort of basic behaviors of being a data-driven organization. So anything you've got on that would be really useful if there's any
I'll link it
references for that.
As soon as I can.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Maybe I can follow up on that. So indeed, going from 0 to having a framework in place, whether of course, it depends how large your company is. Whether it's a consulting company that builds a framework that customizes it for you, or you build it in-house. If I understand your question, Jamie, is about sitting down at the start of this journey and saying, okay, what elements do we need in place to then become data-driven? And so you would like to think of different things like data and processes that have been mentioned already, but also a talent strategy, and beyond tooling, adoption of tooling. How can you train your people to do this? So these are things you can, I believe, you need a good strategy, and not just IT strategy, but a strategy in the enterprise to then say, what elements do we need to pay attention to, and then build work streams from there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a great also question and overview. Anyone else want to add, or we can move to another question?
I would like to add something about data-driven framework, because I guess Jamie's question was coming from, is there a framework in an organization? So my insights in this, having worked for consulting companies as well and serving customers, what you see is that usually this type of framework models are coming from consulting companies, and there are certain levels of maturity, you know, because that's what you gotta have to check some KPIs and really going through, you know, from the experience. And most of the time, consulting companies themselves, they are becoming data-driven and using that learnings and lessons learned from their experience to go serve their customers. So definitely what I would expect, like customers that don't have such data-driven frameworks, maturity levels in place, but they could be absolutely helped by the consulting companies.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just to close it off, like, yeah, now I found the most standard industry framework is the one that comes out of the Gartner survey every year. So that's, I think it's the most typical enterprise framework you can have, and I'll link it now in the chat. That's all.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I can go for the next question.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, actually, I saw a lot of words about people and culture, right? So how do you think that in a data-driven organization, you can try to balance those two? Because a lot of the companies these days are evolving also towards that. And this is a very open-ended question. Like, for example, when you are chasing for, especially my current company, Philips, you're chasing for short-term Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, like P&L gains. But at the same time, you want to invest in this journey towards data-driven, let's say, culture. In your experience, how do you see some of the other companies do it in that sense?
May I add something for that? I've done some research for this during my master thesis, and I was looking at the machine learning for legal documentation. And what we saw is that different departments had different definitions of the data points. So there was interpretation of the data points, and different, like for example, risk and finance had different interpretation of the balance and what happened. So it's not really, like I said, there's no standard. You can't generalize the data points. And that is really key for the core values of what is actually the point to be looking at. And that's also, I uploaded a term paper because I'm doing a doctorate study now, and I wrote a lot about data and these generalization of data for the interoperability of APIs, for example, if we move on. So the APIs can't talk to each other because you have different data definitions.
So in the end, you're saying that you still need an overall strategy on the direction on how things should go.
Yeah, you should have a kind of warehouse of definitions that the same definition is used throughout the whole company. And what I also saw is that, for example, vendors had risk kind of applications to solve problems. They had different definitions than what actually was used in the company. So you need mapping tables to the interpretation to actually correct the interpretation between the companies and the vendors and the departments. So it was like the silo business again. Business units have their own kind of worlds. And that is, I think, the problem with generalization.
And I'm sure a lot of our friends here on the chat in the call face that from day to day. And perhaps that's my follow-up question. How do you actually break the silo to get different communities or teams to talk to each other to get to that culture perspective? Do you think a bottom-up approach or top-down approach is better in this case?
Lou, thank you for the question. If I may start with this. So this is definitely in the area of a culture and breaking the silos like Ernst, Jan was talking about. So what you see, there is a lot of, there is the business side and there is the data science team, the department. So what's happening is that the business side is coming up with a question and they go to the data scientist, data analyst, can you please pull that data out for me? And what happens in that case is that, data science is being seen as a service. And then the second thing is that data scientists, they need to actually fill out, sometimes in some organizations who are heavy loaded with, all kinds of processes, they have to fill in some forms, or they have to go through a bunch of, a lot of different layers of getting approvals, which is taking quite several days. And that's where the data accessibility itself is actually being slowed down, and then the motivation and the entire, approach of answering questions and forming that data-driven culture and mindset is actually a little bit affected. So one alternative, one solution to this would be data democratization and really just automating all those forms, approvals, processes, and have those happening in a faster way, just to enable the mindset.
I can join. I was introducing in my company the very first reports and the very first analysis. When I was joining, it was usually more spread out through department to department. So my first challenge when connecting people with the data, so we all talk about the same stuff, was the hardest part was how to make data interesting. So how to show reports or analysis that is not mandatory because boss said so, but maybe this data doesn't show results of my department, but I can see how it connects. And so I'm underlining an issue, but I don't give a tool how to solve it, because I think it is very personalized. I needed to take into account not only the specifics of the departments, but also the people that were looking. And there is a very fine balance, because the amount of data, for example, we present to the people and the recipients, and what they can get from the data, so it is not too much. So when breaking the silos and building the data structure, for me, it was one of the very first questions, how to make the data interesting.
Yeah, to add to this, like what I saw, these problems are all really relatable. And usually, I think the easiest way is to have a bit of top down from you should have a leader who is also a technologist, because usually those people can, they have the power to make the decisions and to push them through, and to, talk to the data scientists, whoever is doing the analysis. That's, I think, by far the most effective change, because if it's purely top down, then what Andreea described happens. It's just, you need to talk to 10 people before going to the next step, or they say, yeah, you can do the next step, but I don't know if we can even implement the first one. And that gets very frustrating, and then, yeah, data scientists will leave probably.
I think that's a really good point, David, and also building up on something Andreea mentioned on requests that data scientists received. If you're lucky to be in an organization that is already taking efforts to govern their data, that there are data owners, data stewards, and maybe a functional mailbox that you can email when you find issues in data, for example, what helps is really to push back as a data analyst or as a data scientist, to push back when you get a business request to do some analysis based on an Excel maybe, or basically random data sources, to really push back and say, no, we will do this analysis by sourcing data that's from the golden source. what's the use of building insights and create a solution if you cannot then put it in production because the data, the columns that you need aren't in the golden source. And this conversation on the design you need to have early on. Sometimes there's business pressure and you need to do some things as a one-off, but simply raising this pushback can help people pause and think about, hey, is this the right way to do it, or are we putting out fires instead of building future-proof solutions?
Yeah.
Really nice. Thank you for that. I guess I can go for another follow-up question for the panel. So what would you say is something that if you rewind the clock 5 years ago, you would do differently compared to when you first started your journey into data science or with a data-driven organization?
Wait, I didn't hear. What is the question exactly?
What would you have done differently if you
okay.
rewind the clock 5 years in the past?
Like, yeah, I think maybe this, realizing the fact that out of spots, a data-driven organization, and I found out it's also really important to have, let's say, good colleagues to learn from when you start. I think that's probably a good learning to, also for the future, not only for the past.
Can I just add to this? Like myself, I've started eight years ago. So I have just to give a bit of a background, I have a bachelor and master in electronics and engineering. And I had my first contact with data science 8 years ago on my master thesis. However, I think one thing that I would do differently is to really find a mentor with experience, who's actually practitioner, a data scientist that was, already in the industry for a couple of years, that I could actually learn from them, because I believe that when you have a mentor with already, some experience, that could help you actually fasten that learning, like shorten that learning curve and really give you the leap to get more knowledge in a faster way, rather than just going myself, deep diving into a lot of courses that I don't know if I ever gonna use them, because internet is full of those courses. It's like we have a lot of courses and sometimes can get overwhelming. So definitely something also that I recommend to everyone, to find a mentor, practitioner in the field, and create that relationship to, just to help you boost that career in data science or data analytics or whatever cloud platforms, whatever tech stack you wanna specialize in.
Andreea, I have a question in regards to the mentor part, right? So how do you exactly find the mentor? So would it be okay if I just drop the message, hey, Andreea, so can you be my mentor? So how does it work in data science? Because it's definitely different.
Definitely. So it really depends on the mentor. Some people are really busy, but it's all about building the relationship, with a mentor. It's really, just invite someone for a cup of coffee or for lunch and say, hey, I would like to have a chat with you. I'm learning. I want to transition my career to data science right now, and I really need some guidance. Would you be that person? And maybe you're up for a coffee. Sometimes it works like this. Sometimes it works through meetups and, showing up at meetups, at the events like yours, exchanging LinkedIn profiles, and start the conversation from there.
Yeah, I did hear a lot about a nano degree for data scientists, and also the data scientist needs to have like a PhD. They need to have a great knowledge in statistics, mathematics. So every time when I hear about data science, it sounds like it's a super complex job and it's a super hard job. It's not one skill, it's millions of skills. And so thank you, Anna, for recommending Coursera. I think that's an old good one, and lots of people get a very nice structured knowledge out of it.
Sure, definitely. So just one thing that I want to add to this, like for the e-learning courses, what you see there's a very high dropout rate because a lot of people, if they are new to the field, they can get super low motivated all of a sudden by facing errors while coding, and they kind of have this system of beliefs they're not good for that. And because of not having a mentor who can guide them and empower them, it's also something that that actually adds to that factor of giving up.
If I can join, I would actually propose a substitution for a mentor if you can find, and this is some sort of community. I mean, at least one or few friends with whom you can exchange ideas, because what I find is sometimes the hardest part of data analysis is actually having an ideas or missing on something, because it doesn't matter how much experience do you have or how much time do you spend. You can always make a mistake or miss on something, and it's really cool if someone can go from outside. Actually, it doesn't really always need to be like data analyst or data scientist, and just, hey, what do you think about this, right? So just to expand your way of thinking.
Thank you. Great point. Mm-hmm.
One thing on the skills, I think, Ala, you mentioned this. There's a big world out there, and it could help if you aren't already to think about what kind of data specialist you want to become. Do you want to go towards becoming a machine learning engineer? Do you want to be more of an analytics translator? So data science, to me, is already something very, very broad, and it is worth the time to spend thinking what kind of professional you want to become.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's relatively new type of role in a way, right? Data scientist. I know it's existing in the market, but it was not called this way. I think the name data scientist is, forgive me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I think it's 5 years old or something, but I could be wrong.
I think it's a little bit longer than that. Maybe we weren't called them machine learning engineers, neither data scientists, now deep learning engineers, and we're inventing a lot of new roles. But that's okay. I just want to bring up this example of Andrew Ng. Maybe some of you know him. Andrew Ng is one of the AI legends and the founder of Coursera, the link that Anna has shared in the chat. So he's saying that 50, 60 years ago, when we have invented computers, we didn't know we are going to invent the role of software engineer. And that's what we had, 40, 30 years after we have invented computers. And now, we have more chips that more transistors on the chip that we can run deep learning. And then we are, able to invent roles like deep learning engineers and things like that.
Great point. Cool. Lou, do you have any other questions from our community?
There's still quite a lot, but we are almost out of time. Well, we are out of time, actually.
I hope it's okay. Please let me know. Yeah, we started a little bit later, so if that's okay for you to stay a maximum like 10 minutes longer. If it's not, so no worries, it's going to be recorded. Apologies for that. Technical things happening.
Guys, I need to leave now because I had another meeting now. So nice being here. Thank you for having me. And always feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David.
See you.
See you, David.
See you. Yeah, we can use also Slack Workplace, the one that's I'm going to share as well again, where you can post your questions, but there is still something that you would like to ask because you still have 20 people on the call, so we can use this time for the questions. Yeah, in case anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask it out loud, so that's absolutely perfect. That's all good. So maybe in the meantime, yes. So if you have something, because I do have another question.
Go for it.
Okay. One of the things that's the audience, like the person from the community who would like to be anonymous, ask about the company when they're building the departments. So they sometimes start with data analysts only, having only one data scientist or researcher. So there's so many different ways how company are building their data departments. And the person is asking, what would be your best advice? Which specialist to start? How big it should be the department if you would like to be really data-driven company? Anyone who is comfortable to pick up?
Anna, is your question about how to start?
Yeah, how to start a department, because some people start with the head of data, then hired 2 analysts and 1 scientist, or only data scientist, no analyst.
Right. Yeah. That's a good question with no single answer. For me, the best answer to start is to just start, because it really depends on the context at your enterprise, whether you start with from the skills, from the data, from a use case that inspires you. Just start somewhere. It will take some time to get some efficiency and some use out of these analytic skills, but then you can build your talent and analytic strategy around the small bit you already have and grow from there. But first, you need to start.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I think actually, like, just start is really good advice, and I will just add on that the sooner the better often, because even when constructing data warehouses or data lakes and spaces that just collect data, often companies or starting startups don't think about data analysis because we don't have data yet, right? It's too early. But actually, when you design those sort of data warehouses or lakes without having a goal how you want to approach, analyze, or use the data, then it ends up with a really big burden on the endpoint working data analysts and data scientists that can sometimes need to reverse engineer the data itself or fix some faults in the structure.
Yeah, very good point, Mateusz, on the goal. And, just to keep ourselves reminded, why do we need to start a data science department? And also, if we hire a data scientist, why do we need, what is the why of our project? And having the goal, that we want to achieve, that's also going to give more mission-driven, more vision-driven, work for the data scientists who are more likely to, just leave the job if there's no vision and no, mission and bigger goal that we need to achieve. And if I may just share the screen for one more time, I want to share something with you about, how to start, in a company with this. And there is a pyramid of needs for data scientist roles. And it's, like the pyramid of Maslow, but actually this is a pyramid of needs, data science hierarchy of needs. So what you see is that, there are 5 major, this is a very famous, by the way, you can just Google this and find it on Google. And a lot of companies are using this. So there are 5 major type of activities that you need to do to reach the top of AI, to actually be able to do AI. So what I know from my experience is that most of the time, all of the work in a project, 80% or 90% is around these first 5 layers. And the AI work is just 10-20% of the time of a project. So depending on the budget, if you're a startup, by the way, you may hire one person to do everything in the beginning. And if you're a scale up, you may hire 2-3 people to do all kinds of other stuff. But what you see also is that data scientists, they come up with a very specific, knowledge on data science, modeling, statistics, probabilistics, and they're ending up on some roles where they're being asked to do data engineering type of tasks, which they are not being taught in school. And also about, doing software engineering, which is sometimes actually inviting them to be flexible and willing to learn programming and all kinds of stuff. So this is something that I wanted to share with you. I hope it's going to be helpful and inspiring, and really do some more reading. There are a lot of blogs around this. So yeah, I hope it helps.
Indeed. Yeah, it is very helpful. Thank you so much.
May I add something to this? As I was a chair yesterday of a conference of algorithm trading in Amsterdam, and there I had an opening keynote is that about transparency. So regulators want to see what the algorithm is doing, and also you have to upload if you use them for trading. This was the conference, and the regulators were there as well, and also professor of law. And what we saw at the end was that explainable AI could do a lot. And that's what we're going to look for next. So you see the data journey, the data lineage, as it's called. There's also regulations already for banks and financial markets for that. So you need to know what the decisions are for the data, and it can't be a black box. So transparency was very hot topic in this sense. So whatever you code, you need to know and to evidence to the regulators what you are doing, what decisions are. So for pricing and for marketing and everything, you need to show the transparency and all the root of the data. Basically, that is actually what it was. So yeah,
I think you're touching also on the topic of XAI, explainable AI.
Exactly.
Right. So that's, a new big project that's going on at the moment as well, research projects, and there are some actually ways and techniques how to do that. I recommend the book about that. I have it myself, Hands-on Explainable AI with Python. And that's, I think, I can just share it with you. If you just Google on that, I think it's from O'Reilly. And, there are a bunch of notebooks, even with the code on GitHub, you can use to go through how to explain certain decisions you are making while you are doing your data science project.
Great. That was actually one of the questions, like, can you recommend any book that I can fall in love with data science? No. So is this the one that we can use? I know the one that I personally read was Life 3.0. That was one of my favorite ones, but I think it's for people who are not in data science, or just, just to have an overall understanding. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing the book. And if there are any questions will be later, we're going to add. I would like to thank all the guests who already left, and those who stayed till the end. Thank you so much for your time. And this topic seems to be so interesting, so we'll probably will have to do it again next year. And so maybe dive into a little bit more in some specifics. And I would like to thank you for your time. I know you're all very, very busy, and this is an amazing event to finish the year. Thank you for doing for Slack community. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you for the event.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you so much.